Hello everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen and hear my voice, so I could start if everyone hear me. Please, if someone don't hear me, just put some note on chat. Since I don't have any notification that you don't hear me, I'm gonna start. So probably you know that I'm here today to show the possibilities and advanced features of our BEXEL Manager software. This BEXEL Manager solution integrates all dimensions of BIM, so everyone can use our solution for all aspects of BIM analysis during the project lifecycle. In this webinar, hopefully that you all downloaded our trial version, so this webinar will focus on unique and advanced 4D and 5D BIM features and the tools that you can use to generate and maintain your 4 and 5D BIM simulations. First of all, in a common practice and everyday construction project activities and a real case project, the cost estimation and planning are the two of the most important activities, since both of them have a significant impact on the overall project success. And that's why we believe that BEXEL Manager is a really useful tool for all aspects of project management, since it integrates cost classification and 4D and various BIM analysis during all stages of project. So when I mentioned the cost classification databases, our cost editor module, which is incorporated in our solution, and you can find it here, integrates BIM cost databases, and it enables you to create and use various cost classification systems. So I'm going to show you, for example, I'm going to minimize the screen and show you the already created master format classification database in Excel sheet, So when I open this cost classification, you see almost standardized cost items and their codes, name, description of these cost items, cost units, daily outputs for each of them, formulas, which mean that unit cost is multiplied or how it's calculates with the quantification of the items, element query, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, material supplement, equipment, resource name, quantity, and resource types, all with the prices. So I'm showing you in order to know that you can create or load any classification, any custom classification or national standardized classification system into our software and use it. So I'm going to go back to the software and I'm going to show you how you can do that. Here we have already loaded uniform classification system, but I'm going to create a new one, which is master format. And I'm just going to import this master format cost classification database. And if I expand all these, you see all these cost items, which are generated automatically from our Excel sheet that I already showed you. And if you look closely, these columns are almost identical or are identical as you see them in an Excel file. So you have all these activities, their codes, the description of all these activities, or actually cost items, unit cost, daily output, quantity type, units, formulas, how they're calculated, so you can use any of them on your project. So when this kind of cost database is loaded into our project, you can use these special quantity formulas and element queries to actually select in the model itself which of these cost items are applicable to assign to the cost, to the model element. The system knows that automatically because of these predefined element queries. So I can select any of these cost items and select applicable elements, and it's going to show these elements. If I isolate these elements, you see which element could be assigned, which are applicable to assign specific cost item to it. So I'm going to go back to the uniform classification system and show all BIM model elements. And here, if you expand all these cost items from uniform classification system, you see all items with all these specified information within the different columns. And you can select any of these cost items and select elements that could be applicable to apply to assign this cost item. It also works and vice versa, so I can select any of the model elements in our 3D view and select filter applicable, so the software automatically sends me to the cost item that applies to this selected element, wall insulation. Okay, so when you see how these cost items are connected with our 3D model, actually it works using the elements queries, as I already mentioned. So if we select any of these cost items that we already created using import button, we can edit cost item definition and see what of the information are actually creating this specific item. So you see these are general information using quantity types and quantity units applicable for this cost item, some resources that applied to specific items, and mapping. Using this query mapping, we tell to this specific cost item how to automatically assign or to map with the 3D model elements. So in this case, we predefine that all cost items, that means custom place concrete forms for pile caps, are automatically assigned for the family that have a name or some specific different property that you know that your 3D model will have, and it's gonna search it using these element queries. So you can define the query for all items of your cost definition, and you can use that to apply the cost to 3D model elements. So one of the examples how we can also apply the cost to our BIM model elements is actually to select any of these elements, filter applicable. So we know that the system smartly found the cost item which should be applied to this 3D element, and we can select that item and assign cost item to this specific element. And we're gonna hit OK because it asks us to apply and map that to the area this specific cost item to the area of this element. And then we hit OK. When we go to the assigned items, now you see in the classification item that we already assigned it, showed right here. If we expand all, we're going to find it here. And it applied to that specific element, and it also generates the quantity of these elements using the formula and the unit cost that this cost item has, and summarize, or actually summarize this value to a total cost. So this way of assigning the cost items to the 3D models are actually manual, and it could be time consuming. That's why we have a unique feature that BEXEL Manager has, and that's actually automatic apply of cost items to all 3D elements using all these predefined element queries. And what that means, actually, it means that if we select Uniformat entire cost classification database and right-click on it using tool auto-assign cost items, the system will automatically assign all applicable cost items to all 3D elements in our model. So I'm going to hit OK and wait the system to finish. And when I go back to the assigned items, when I expand all this, you see that all these items are actually assigned automatically. So if I select elements, you see all these elements are automatically assigned to the cost items, different cost items. And now we have a total cost for the entire building. Just in case if something didn't go through the automatic assign, we can use isolate tool right here. That's like another option to be sure that all the cost items are applied. So we can hide selected elements. And now we see that some of the elements are not applied. So we're going to select only these elements, which are the roofs. And I'm going to show you how you can easily add the cost item to these. Really easy, just using the cost editor filter applicable. Okay, and now it sends me to the applicable cost item. I'm just going to hit assign cost items with the predefined mapping for that. I'm going to hit OK. So if we go back to assigned items and once again select elements, now we show all. You see that everything, all the cost items are applied and assigned to all 3D elements of our building. And we see that the total cost of our building is this one. And now you have a ability to see the material costs for each of these activities and labor cost, with also equipment costs for each of these, which are predefined in each of these cost items itself. And using the quantities for each of the elements which are applied, we have this summarized total cost. In order to show you another useful feature how you can use this quantification and auto-assign cost items to the 3D elements, you also have a quantity. So it means that you have automatically calculated quantification of all your building elements according to Uniformat classification system, because we apply that one. So for example, if we want to check that, I'm just going to show you how it works. We can select, for example, some specific item. I'm going to find the columns, for example. And I'm going to select all these elements, isolate. And now we see some of the columns, and these are underground columns, probably of this specific item. And if I select all these elements, now you see the quantity of these elements and unit cost for each of them, and material cost and the total cost for this item. So in order to check the quantity, if it's okay, we can go to the favorite properties of these specific columns and see that volume is 7.73. So it's actually okay. So it uses these quantities. And also you have the area and the length of each of these. So now we have quantified these elements. We can select any of elements that we need to check in our project and check the quantities and the total cost for these works. So for example, I'm going to show you here. We have that entire building differentiated into different phases of execution or execution on site, construction site. And we already have prepared some selection sets, which are actually smart selection sets that automatically collects all these 3D model according to some predefined properties that all these elements have. So I'm going to just show, for example, these phases, different phases of our project, phase 1, 2, and 3. And if, for example, if we select phase 2 of this model, we can filter by element selection into the assigned items. And now the system shows the total cost of phase 2 and all these selected elements with the differentiated cost items. So we can check that for different phases of the building. You see the total cost also changes. So it's really useful for various checking of your cost and quantification of your project. And also you can use these selected elements from the uniform classification system to perform another different kind of quantity takeoff analysis using our quantity takeoff module if it's necessary. So I'm just going to go back to the cost editor. And here, when all these activities, or actually the cost items, are assigned to the model elements, for example, in a real case project and real scenarios, you usually have some kind of changes in the market using different subcontractors or different materials or resources on market. And sometimes it happens that some resource may change the price. So you can also update the total cost of your building using the resources or cost item definitions and changing the information within, for example, resource. I'm going to find some resource, for example, reinforcement. And you see that the cost of these resources are actually $20 per hour. So I'm just going to change this activity. But just before that, I'm just going to go back and make sure that you see the total cost of this project. So you see this is the total cost of the project. So if I go to the cost editor and change the resource, now go back to the assigned items, you see that the total cost is also changed. It's a little bit increased. So it's really great feature. So you can always be updated on a total cost of your project during the entire project and all phases of your project at all. So once the actually the cost items are applied to the model elements, and you can adjust all these cost items and the resources and the prices of them in order to be updated. You can also use this while I'm here on 3D view. You can also hover over the any of element, and you see the information regarding the cost of that selected element on your screen. So you see the quantity and the cost of these elements on the screen. So if I change the hovering and the position of the mouse, you see the cost is changing also, which is another great tool in order to just show some specific element and see and anticipate the cost of this element. And now once you have a cost items assigned to 3D elements, the next step in order to create our 5D BIM simulation is actually to create our schedule, or actually 4D BIM simulation, which we're gonna link with a assigned cost items, and we're gonna have a full 5D BIM simulation. In order to go and create some schedule, I'm gonna go to the schedule editor, and now you see in this demo model we don't have any schedule created, and we're gonna show how you can create this really simply. I'm gonna go to the schedule tools in the ribbon, and I'm gonna use the methodology and zone editor. If I go to the methodology editor, I'm gonna expand this screen for a bit in order to explain how it works. Here we have already created methodology for a typical office building. So you see that the name of this methodology is office building, and we have all these activities and links, or actually the constraints and the relationships between all these created activities interlinked. You see all these different constraints, which you can adjust and change in order to create the specific methodology for your building or specific object. And all these actually the methodology items are linked to the cost items that we already created using uniformat classification system. So when I click on any of these items here in the activities, you see that all of these are linked to the specific cost item in our, I'm just gonna go back to the assigned item. So you see all these items from cost classification are linked to the methodology, and all these activities are also interlinked between itself using some specified methodology in order what are the rules and progress of executing of each of these activities on our construction site. So these methodologies could be really simple, or could be, this is some kind of medium advanced methodology, but on a different kind of project, or different kind of if you have a different kind of activities of these buildings, for example, sport venues or residential buildings, you're going to have a slightly different activities and methodology that you can create. And all these created methodologies could be saved within the project You see this one is also saved right here. And now I'm going to close this one in order to present the zone editor, which also means that we're going to follow some specific methodology for execution and creating of activities on construction site, and create the specific levels, or actually hierarchy levels of these activities using our methodology, or zone items. Zone items are actually not linked with the cost items. These could be linked to any specific 3D model element, or to the some aerial zones of your building. So, for example, you have here construction sequence zone, which means that we have a different methodology for executing our schedule. In this specific example, we're going to execute our schedule in 3 phases, which are also connected, and the second phase starts when the first one is at 30% of finish, and the third one also starts when the second one is 30% finished. And we also can change these relationships between all these specified activities in our zone editor. And what it actually means, it means that we created different kind of activities which are linked to the 3D elements. So if I select any of these activities, you see that all of them are selected, or actually automatically linked to our selection set. And previously I showed you these 3 selection set, which are showing different phases or different zones of our building. In the same manner, we also created different other levels of our schedule activities. So in this case, we created different levels. So it means that all our activities in our schedule that we plan to execute will be executed by levels as well. And also by main type of works. We also specified some main type of works using also selection set or smart selection set. So if you select any of these activities specified in the zone editor, you see that it's referenced to the specific selection set, and which is actually great. So if you add some new elements to specific selection set, all these new 3D elements will be automatically calculated and used to generate a new updated schedule. So when we created our zone editors, or actually zones within our zone editor and our methodologies using the assigned cost items from the imported or created classification system, we can create our schedule from scratch, or we can use some creation template. And using creation template is really good option if you have a sometimes job at almost the same specific buildings on different places, for example, which uses the almost same construction methodology or almost the same type of the schedule. So you can create different construction templates and use them to automatically generate your schedule. So here we have some already created construction template, which is actually created using already explained methodologies and zones. And how it's created, well, it uses the main type of works, which I already showed you, main type of works as a first level of your schedule activities, and then construction sequences, which are here, first, second, and third phase of our building. And then all these works will be executed by levels on each level. And then we have the last leaf of activities, and these are actually the activities from our methodology, and these are actually activities linked to the assigned cost items. So in order to create new schedule, I'm just going to create new schedule, demo schedule, using the button OK. I'm just going to go back to the, you have a different kind of preview of your schedule right here. So this is a logic preview of your schedule. You also have a line of balance and the Gantt chart preview. So here we have a Gantt chart, and just before we create the activities within our schedule, I'm just going to set the start date for our schedule, for example, April, some of the April of 2019. So when I hit OK, you see that our start moved to the specified start date of our schedule. And here I'm just going to show how you can easily create the schedule using the creation template. Also, you can use the import option to import some already created schedule from different scheduling software as Primavera or MS Project. But in that case, and that's a really time-consuming process, in that case you're gonna have to link manually or semi-automatically all these 3D elements with the activities of your imported schedule. And that's almost the same manner as the other 4D simulation BIM softwares actually works. They import some schedule and they manually link 3D elements to the activities that are already imported from your schedule from somewhere else. But here, the main feature and the main benefit of our software is actually how you can create entire schedule using these methodology and zones that we already created and using creation templates. So now I'm just gonna hit the right button and create new task using creation wizard. And now I'm just gonna load the predefined construction template. So when I hit OK, you see that it's gonna use all these predefined methodology and zone items: main type of work, construction sequence, level, and office building. So these are actually the cost items classified in the uniformat classification system. And just remember this structure of the schedule. So when I hit OK, you see the same structure applied to the created schedule. So now you see, if I expand this one, pop out. I'm just going to bring it right here. So you see the first level of our schedule is our construction works. And then the second level should be the phases of our schedule. So if I expand this one, you see the phases. And then the second level of our schedule are actually the levels of our building, or actually the stories of building. So you see all these stories of our building. And the last, the fourth level of our schedule that it's automatically created are actually the cost items itself, or actually the activities based on the cost items from uniformat. So you see all these activities, and if I expand all, you're going to see all these activities. And if I scale this schedule, you see all these activities are linked and connected. And we have just in a few mouse clicks and minutes entire schedule created with all activities linked between itself. And all these activities are also linked with the 3D model elements, which is the greatest thing of all. So if I select any of these 3D elements on our screen, I can find these selected elements in our Gantt chart, or actually I'm just going to use it here, find task with element. And you see this activity has linked this 3D element to it. And it's going to be executed at that specific time. So all these activities are actually automatically generated, and they have some default duration, but the additional feature and the great thing about our software is actually that you can change any of these duration for any of the activity, for each activity, and all these links will be, or actually relationships with different activity will be followed when we change it. So I can do that manually, just expanding this task right here. So you see everything is changed because this activity is also changed. I can move it back. And this is a little bit unprecise if I do it just manually. So we can go to each of these activities and go to the task editor, and we can change duration right here beside of different other tools that are really useful to change for each of these activities. So once we created the entire schedule, also the selection of the elements works vice versa. So I can select any of these activities within our schedule. For example, I'm just going to select all structural activities. And now we can go to the selected elements on our screen. So you see these elements are selected. So I'm just going to isolate all selected elements, and you see these are elements within structural activities of our schedule. So we can select this one, for example, just to show how it works. So everything is connected. So these elements are immediately connected with the activities of created schedule. And our schedule is also created with all of these elements. So if I go back and show all, we also have a ability to present this 4D simulation that is created. So I'm just going to go back to schedule animation and update our animation right here. And if we go to the schedule viewer and click play, you see some of the activities are going on. So in order to create it actually the accurate, I'm just going to select the elements which are neutral actually in our 3D model, which is actually existing site. So I'm just going to select all these elements of site and go back to schedule viewer and set these selected elements and neutral elements. So these are going to be visible. And also we can find this specific activity, which is actually site preparation, in our schedule. So I'm just going to find this in our schedule. This is site preparation, and we can change this activity into the, for example, demolition activity. So it means that this site will actually disappear during our activity. And also we can do some minor adjustment to our schedule if it's necessary regarding visibility of these presented elements. I'm just going to hit settings. You see these various settings that you can apply to your schedule. But in this case, I'm just going to use different colors for these. And once we hit update of our schedule, you see all these activities will be differently colorized using the activities produced from the methodology. And when we go back to schedule animation, if I hit play, you see our 4D simulation. Also, we can change some additional features within animation itself. We can hit options and change duration of this animation, for example, 30 seconds, and make the schedule or visibility of these elements or refreshing the activities executed based on hourly interval of time. So the entire 4D simulation will be more fluent. So when I hit play, you see everything is a little bit fluent. And once you see that, if I stop this schedule for a minute, you know that we have a already calculated completed cost for this building and how it actually works. Well, here in a schedule editor, we created our schedule using creation template, but also with creation of a template, or actually creation of our schedule, we assigned these assigned cost estimation of our building to our schedule. So it works this way. So if I go to this demo schedule that we created and hit edit of the schedule, we use the cost version that we applied to this specific schedule. So if I hit OK, you see that our schedule actually calculates the quantity of assigned items for entire project during the time of execution. So if I go back and hit play, you see that the cost of completed works is actually changing as the video goes up to the end of the simulation. And we can also create some animation with a different position of the camera, which made the simulation a little bit more attractive. So just know that completed cost is also changing. Aiming the total cost the same value as it is as in the assigned items. But that's not all actually, because once we created a schedule and applied some cost items or total cost that we pre-assigned before, we can use the task report feature and tools to actually do some adjustments or planning of our resources if it's necessary. So I'm just going to hit task report button here for entire schedule. So you see here a cumulative cost for our entire schedule. And also you see these labor and equipment and different activities for our schedule. So we can just filter any of these, for example, specific resources if it's necessary, electricians, for example. And we can see the average planned resources for specific date, or actually the timeline during the execution of your schedule. So you can rearrange or plan specific resources in order to optimize your resources on construction site. So these kind of reports can actually be exported as well to Excel or save image of these reports. And these are really beneficial in order to plan your activities and your resources on construction site. And another great example of the features of our software is actually that, as I already explained that all these activities are linked to the 3D models, and all these 3D model elements are actually linked to the cost items. And the great thing is if we update the model with the new model elements, the entire schedule will be updated as well, and the total cost, total value of cost will be also updated based on the new model elements that come from the updated sources. So I'm just going to show how it works actually. Here you see our model, and just remember the total cost of this building. Here I'm just going to show you that this model is actually created from 3 different sources, which is actually the real case scenario. In a real case project, you usually have a model that comes from different sources, usually IFC sources from different disciplines, and you merge all these models into one, for example, in this case, in BEXEL Manager, and then you use that kind of merge model to execute different analysis and 4 or 5D BIM simulations. So this model is actually created from architectural, mechanical, and structural sources. And if you noted here, in this case, when we created the schedule, we only had 2 levels designed for this building of mechanical works. And now when we update, we're going to see what's going to happen with all these elements and our schedule. So I'm just going to save this project and close it in order to update the project with the updated version of our IFC files. So I'm just going to go to the project and versions webinar. So I'm going to update our model. Using 2 new sources for a structure and MEP disciplines. So when I hit OK, I'm just going to change the name of the file. And while it's going on, I'm just going to show you. So here we have a screen that asks you how to update our model. So the actually system automatically recognizes these sources as the same sources that we created a building before. So I'm just going to hit OK. So also we can just make some adjustments if it's necessary. So we can, if some new elements are showing, that these new elements will be visible in our updated model. But if some deleted elements are created in authoring software, we can choose what we're going to do here. So we can delete deleted elements from our project, or we can save or actually leave these in a project if it's necessary. We're going to delete all the elements, so we're going to just use the updated version of the model completely. So I'm just going to hit OK. So the process is going to take some time. And while it's going on, I'm just going to show you this web page where you can apply for a trial request or a student free version of our software, educational license. So if you want to try our software, just go to the BEXEL Manager and use these trial request forms in order to get your free trial version of our software. So when this actually process is get complete. Okay, it's almost finished. So we're gonna open this updated schedule. Okay, so now we have our updated schedule. If you go to the 3D view, now we see what actually is happened with our model. So we have new updated building structural elements and some MEP design. And here what is great with the update in our software, actually you can use selection sets and use update selection set in order to see what is actually happened during the update process. So I'm just gonna hide all the elements and go to the update and see these are added elements. If you just click here to show these elements, these are actually added new elements which we didn't have before. These are some rooms. So I'm just gonna hide these rooms to see a little bit easier. So these are actually the new elements, added elements. These are actually elements with a changed geometry, just a few of them, you see. And these are elements with the changed properties. So these elements have some changes within properties itself. So this is actually a great tool in order to analyze the changes of your model with the updated version. So if I go to show all, you see our updated model. And when we go to the cost editor, we can also update our cost again based on the new 3D elements updated in the model. So I'm just going to hit auto assign cost items. So when we go to the assign items, I'm just going to try to do it once again. So we're going to save this updated project. Sorry for a little bit inconvenience, but the software just freezes a bit. So when we restart the project, the same project is here updated. So when we go to the cost editor and hit auto assign cost items once again, the process is going to take some time. So it's going to assign new cost version. So hopefully you remember previously assigned cost items. So the software also saved these information here. So we can do some different analysis of cost, total cost on our project. So now the total cost of the project is over the 8 millions, and previously it was a little bit, 7 millions, around 7 millions. And also with the new cost version, we can select, for example, new building elements and see what of the assigned items are assigned to this in order to be sure that everything is calculated accurately. So these are the cost items that are assigned to these specific elements. So these are actually custom place roof and slabs and walls. So everything is correct here. So once we have a new cost version assigned and the total cost updated, we can go to the schedule animation again in schedule editor and update our schedule using the new cost version. So once I'm going to go back to update with the none, just to make sure that everything is okay. And now we're going to use the latest version of our cost item assigned. Hit OK. And go to the Gantt chart of our schedule. And update the schedule. So note here, while we updating our schedule, the software actually gives us information window with all these little bit warnings, what is going to happen with our created schedule. So if we go filter creation rules, we see all these activities will be created again. And most of these activities we didn't have in a previous schedule because they are applied to the new building model elements and new levels of mechanical works. So when I hit update and go to our schedule animation, you see the total cost also updated. And go to the schedule view. And again, I can put the animation to be active. And when I hit play, you see all buildings elements are actually executing according to our schedule. And all new elements are applied. And you see everything updated in a minutes. So I'm just going to stop it and to show these all MEP elements and just going to isolate only MEP. You remember that we have only 2 levels of MEP works. So now we have all these elements are executing on site according to our schedule. So hopefully you all get this webinar interesting, and hopefully you learn a little bit more about advanced 4D and 5D features of our software and how easy it could be creating a complete 4D BIM simulation and creating full 5D BIM simulation as well using the BEXEL Manager and these advanced features for 4 and 5D BIM. If you have some questions, please, you have some time to ask them. I actually just found a few questions from your end. And actually, I encourage you to try our software if you didn't do that already, and use these zone and schedule editor for creating the schedule, because it's much easier and simple than you doing that in separate scheduling software and then actually manually assigning these activities with the 3D model elements. Here you can create your plan, you can create your schedule automatically linked with the 3D elements, automatically linked with the cost items, and anticipate the total cost of your project, and you can visualize all these activities in your 4 and 5D BIM simulation in order to avoid some risks or delays on construction sites. If there's no additional questions, thank you very much for your attendance, and stay tuned for a for additional webinars from our end. Thank you very much.